is still lagging a long way behind the rest of the world. And when I looked at countries like China now has got 1.5 billion people. India has also got 1.5 billion people. And ironically, Africa has now gained the demographics, and we're at 1.5 billion people approximately. It means that we are now at par. But in order for you to focus on where we are going as Africa, I wanted you to note that by the year 2050, the African continent will have approximately 2.5 billion people, and by the year 2070, Africa will be over, according to the UN demographics, over 3 billion people, and will have more people than China and India combined. Now when you bring it back home, I want you to understand that when you look at Uganda now is slightly north of 46 million people. By the year 2030, will be a little over 50 million people. What does that mean? And I want you to contextualize this in the broad aspect, that by the year 2050, Uganda will have a population of approximately over and near 120 million people. Professor Omaswa is one of those who are studying the lifestyles, social behavior, looking at ways and means of treating people, getting health indices. But I want you to understand, I've worked with Professor Omaswa in the Ministry of Health, but I want you to look at where Uganda is today, so that you can contextualize the concept and the narrative of this book. By the year, as we talk now, Uganda's population, we have a population growth of 3.2% per annum population growth. Our fertility rate is at about 6.3%. And when you look at the future projections, this growth, if you metamorphose it and relate it to the fundamentals on the ground, we are producing from the current indices of POPSEC close to 5,000 children per day. These are the ones that are documented in the Ministry of Health. And we are producing close to 150,000 children per month, meaning that we are having close to 1.8 million children every year. Between the age of 0 to 4, our population is now nearly hitting or close to 8 million children, 0 to 4, born today and hitting 4. The overall framework, and I want you to contextualize these statistics, the overall framework is that 80% of our population is below the age of 30 years. 16% of our population is below the age, 55% of our population is below the age of 16 years. This is dangerously a very young population. And if you want to look at it in the broad aspect, if you are producing 5,000 children per day, look at the pressure you have on health services or social services, in schools, and so on and so forth. Just look at the pressures you have. This is where the primer is, the mindset, the quality of human beings we are outputting to society. This is what this book is addressing. If we do not concentrate on addressing the paradigm shift, the mindset change, Africa will again have a lost generation. And because of the education standards and the quality of the curricula we have, and the competition for life in terms of existence, we're now coming up with major challenges of society. These challenges are core, and that's what Chailak was talking about. And in pillar number 7 of the PDM, the mindset change, to link it up with all the other pillars, I want you to contextualize and look at the future. If we don't concentrate and focus on the mindset change, we have a challenge in our hands. A big challenge. And this challenge is what determines and what drives the paradigm in this book. If the world is to change, if Africa is to change, we now need to examine the 5 major primers that have changed the world. Primer number 1 is civilization. We call it education, or sharpening the tools of analysis. Primer number 2 is the agrarian revolution, producing enough for consumption and also excess for sale, and also adding value by primer number 3, which is industrialization. Primer number 4 is the scientific revolution. And primer number 5 is the ICT, or information technology revolution, which now is being captured and being overtaken by artificial intelligence. This is the narrative I want you to look at. My brothers and sisters, it is important that we write books, and I would like to thank Dr. Ekure, John Ekure, for having deepened the analysis to contextualize it and to now narrow it, dovetail with the challenges we face. If you look at it projectively, right now we have 5 major challenges, which I think Chailak and those in the Center of Finance and Planning have to tailor their policies to, and with the support of Parliament. Poverty remains a high challenge to society. Poverty, both urban and rural. Number 2, youth unemployment. This is a major problem we face in society. Youth unemployment. Number 3, service delivery. Number 4, corruption. Corruption is a major challenge we face in society. And number 5, equitable distribution of resources across the country, in terms of opportunities for jobs, in terms of opportunities of resources, social way of life, and so on and so forth. Of course, there are other supplementaries or other areas that are critical to prime and transform the economy. Professor Maswa, you recall when I was in the ministry, I attended I went to Harvard, Kennedy School of Government, and did political and economic reform. This book here dovetails to the interests that the African continent needs. Africa is a continent which has got all the resources. If you look at my brothers Japanese there, hardly any natural resources. But now they are currently standing at the third largest economy in the world because of the knowledge, the mindset. The Japanese there have a high level of integrity, timekeeping like the Germans. If a train is to come at 7:58, it's exactly 7:58. Their work schedules are detailed to the core. Their areas of corporate governance are among the highest in the world, what you are describing in this book. Now, when you come to Africa, and I want to tell you the broad aspect, listen to this very carefully. The DRC Congo, it's potentially one of the richest countries in the world, with an estimated mineral wealth of $24 trillion US dollars. The American economy is about $31.5 trillion US dollars. DRC Congo untapped resources are immense. All the 14 major minerals of the world are in the DRC Congo. But it's among the LDCs, least developed countries. You look at the DRC Congo electricity, the capacity to generate hydroelectricity. The DRC Congo has got the means to generate 50% of Africa's hydroelectric needs from Inga 1 to Inga 12, but it remains untapped. Uganda has discovered oil and gas. South Sudan has discovered oil. Somalia has got 93 main holes, what you call oil wells, along the longest coast in the African continent. Kenya has discovered oil in the Turkana Basin. When you look at Tanzania and Mozambique, they have the largest gas deposits in the Indian Ocean. What am I talking about? We, and that's what Dr. Kura is talking about here, we have the resource envelope, we have the resources, but we are still sleeping on the job. The capacity and the means for us to transform is what we're talking about. If you look at Professor Sore, some of us who speak at ESO, I'm Morichan. How do you share poverty? By Morichan. How do you narrate this? I'm happy that Dr. Kure is talking about multiple revenue streams. Multiple revenue streams. When I left Parliament in 2016, and I said I do not want to be a minister, I'm now going to walk the talk, to preach the journey of the private sector. Because this is a private sector-led and driven economy. What Ochala talks about. I've now been able to put together the largest oil reserves in the country, 70 million liters. We have two barges which carry fuel from Kisumu to Kauku, longer than Namboole Stadium, which carry 4.5 million liters each. I was talking to China and Professor Maswa the other day. We've established here in Namambe the first and the largest, one of the four largest disposable syringe plants, these injections, including for vaccines. Africa and Uganda will be manufacturing this in Uganda for the first time in an ever time Adam and Eve like Eden. We now have a pharmaceutical plant. We now have Healing Way in Kololo. We're going to put a large dairy to produce all these dairy products here in Kampala, and so on and so forth. This can be done, and we Africans can change Africa. This book is to touch the narrative for you, to say that it can be done. Yes, we can, the way Obama talks about it. And I want to say, Dr. Ekure, John, this narrative is to tell the Africans that yes, we can. I'm therefore exceedingly humbled and profoundly honored to be part of this journey, describing the way life can change in Africa by looking at the mindset change. Professor Maswa recalls very well, he was one of the game changers in the sector. This man here, Professor Maswa, was one of the first heart surgeons, not neuro, heart surgeons in the East Africa. Professor Maswa. We have got intellectuals, people who have got knowledge. The other day I was in the Makerere convocation and they had first-class students. Professor Port, I looked at and talked to the Vice Chancellor academic and I said, out of this research, you have got students who have got first class. What does government do to sponge this knowledge which has taken deep research? How do we, the private sector and government, how do we benefit from this research which has been there for years and years and years? They are all shelved and not optimized by government or private sector. This is the challenge we face in Africa. Research is a means for you to look at ways and means, and critical thinking, which this book talks about. Critical thinking. Now we do have first-class students who are left here to write borders. When that knowledge could have been used to ensure that we use it to transform society and metamorphose Africa from the backward stages we are to the first world. Read Lincoln Hughes' book, From the Third World to the First World. And you'll see that it can be, when you look at Singapore and all these tiger countries, they had a specific direction. And I want to say Singapore, its GDP, its GNP, is one of the highest now, much higher than the British, who were their colonial masters. Because they saw the vision, they saw that this is how they could get there, and they walked the talk. I want to say, comrades, we have a duty. Africa should now not walk, Africa should walk, run. And I challenge and ask all of you here to go with this book, not to just keep it on the shelf. This should be a book that entrepreneurs, this should be a book that institutions like Makerere Institute, Makerere moves, the university. And I encourage you also to take time, go and lecture to the students in moves, so that they can be able to capture the future of Africa and how it can be done. I want not to spend a lot of time, but to say that that background info I've given you should be food for thought. China has done its part, and government has done a certain great laid the foundation. By 1986, China Pia and the team that came after found the Bank of Uganda coffers empty. Our inflation was negative 179, about there. Our money was worthless. The industries, government inherited, NRM inherited 86 industries that were working. In terms of food, agriculture production, Uganda has got 48% of East Africa's arable land. Our comparative advantage is in agriculture. How have we maximized this to ensure that as we focus on growth as a nation, we must ensure and we work towards building infrastructure, roads. By 1986, there were 1,351 kilometers of tarmac. Today, China boasts of exceeding north of 7,000 kilometers of tarmac. Electricity. When you look at areas like Oil Falls Dam, the dam which was built in 1954, it was generating 62.5 megawatts by 1986. Only 2 generators were giving us power out of the 6. Today, we're heading towards 2,000 megawatts after Karuma. Excess electricity. Uganda now is the largest exporter of coffee in the African continent. We now earn over $1 billion from coffee. We have exceeded Kenya and gone over Ethiopia because Ethiopia consumes most of this coffee, I think 60%. But in terms of export, Uganda now is number 1. We have excess sugar, we have excess maize, we have excess milk, we have excess of excess. But the question is, with these demographics that we're now gaining, this is now where the mind has got to align and ensure that we now have a means to change the thinking of these young people who come out because of the curricula of education, who are studying conflict resolution, religious education, and so on. Can we turn this group and make sure that we retool them to have a different mindset so that we prepare them for the industrial growth of the African continent, so long as we maintain peace and stability in the country. Because peace and stability is infrastructure number 1. I want therefore to conclude by first of all thanking all of you who have come. A lot of excellent submissions have been made here. Africa has got a duty. We who are here, we have got a means, we have got a capacity. I remember a man called Julius Nyerere, when Idi Amin attacked the Kagera Senate in 1978, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere told the Tanzanians, Watanzania, nyoka imetuvamia, adui imetuvamia. Uwezo ya kumpiga nyoka tunayo. Sababu ya kumtoa nyoka na adui ndani ya nyumba tunayo. Watanzania tuko na kazi. Wacha tuungane. Meaning that Watanzania, let's unite, let's work together. We can be able to drive the enemy out of our country. I call upon you, the Ugandans, our people who are today here, to go out and preach the message. You may have a quarrel with your country. You may have a quarrel with your government, but never have a quarrel with your people, never have a quarrel with your country. Let's remain patriots, great nationalists, and great Pan-Africans. Africa has got a bright future. I thank you. I have the greatest honor now, on behalf of the Speaker. I have the greatest honor now, on behalf of the Speaker, Right Honorable Anita Amon, the Head of Parliament, and a great leader to officially launch this book. Changing Our World. I invite you to stand up and give Dr. James and I will ask Professor Maswa to sing for the lion to say he is a jolly good fellow. The Rotarians will sing for the Russian. For the
He's a jolly good fellow, he's a jolly good fellow, he's a jolly good fellow, and so say all of us, and so say all of us, and so say all of us. He's a jolly good fellow, he's a jolly good fellow. He's a jolly good fellow, and no one can deny it.
Dr. Ekure, I have one last function. The Right Honorable Speaker has bought one book from you at 10 million shillings. And I have the honor to officially hand over the 10 million shillings, and I will request my co-sitters to join me in receiving this money.